The rain hadn't let up since morning. Thick sheets of water blurred the streetlights, and cold wind cut through Armand's coat as he trudged down the alleyways of Grimridge. The town was forgotten by time, its buildings chipped and leaning, their windows either broken or smeared with grime. He was supposed to be running errands, but the flickering neon sign of a pawn shop caught his eye. Treasure cellar. The sign buzzed faintly, a single letter flickering in protest. Curiosity tugged at him. With nothing better to do, he pushed the door open and stepped into the dim, musty interior, unaware of the darkness he was about to carry home. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of rusting metal. Fluorescent lights buzzed above, but only half of them worked, casting patches of shadow over the cluttered shelves. Items were stacked in haphazard arrangements. Porcelain dolls with cracked faces, outdated electronics, tarnished jewelry, and tools that looked older than his grandfather. The place didn't seem like it got many customers. The silence was heavy, broken only by the soft tick of a grandfather clock near the back. Armand hesitated before moving deeper inside. Every step on the creaky wooden floor echoed unnaturally loud, as if the building was whispering back. Behind the counter stood an elderly man with a gaunt face, skin pale like wax, and eyes buried deep in sunken sockets. He looked up with no expression, watching Armand the way a spider might watch something fall into its web. He didn't speak, just nodded slightly, as if to give permission to browse. Armand nodded back awkwardly and turned his attention to the glass case in the corner. Inside was a sleek black smartphone, looking out of place among the rusted relics and ancient trinkets. It gleamed, oddly untouched by dust, as if someone had just placed it there seconds before. It wasn't the latest model, but something about it drew Armand in. There was no price tag. When he asked about it, the old man's eyes flicked toward the phone, then back at him. "Found it in a burned-out house," he said, voice brittle like dry leaves. "Owner never came back for it." Armand raised an eyebrow. "Still works." The man nodded slowly, then added, "No refunds, no questions, and don't answer calls after midnight." The warning was delivered flatly, like he was quoting something he'd said 100 times. Armand smirked, figuring it was just an old man's attempt at mystery. Something inside him insisted he walk away. But he didn't. Maybe it was the eerie vibe of the town, or the strange charm of owning a phone with a story. But he handed over a few bills. The man slid the phone across the counter without touching it directly, using a cloth. As soon as it touched Armand's skin, it was cold, unnaturally cold, as if it had just been pulled from ice. He slipped it into his coat pocket, thanked the old man, and stepped back out into the rain, the door's rusty bell giving a single reluctant chime behind him. Walking back to his apartment, Armand noticed how the streetlights dimmed as he passed, and how his reflection in puddles seemed just a little delayed. He blamed the weather and his overactive imagination. He had always enjoyed urban legends, especially the spooky ones. The idea of a haunted phone was amusing, even exciting. He thought maybe he'd write a blog post about it or prank his friends. The phone's screen remained black the whole way home, as if it were conserving power, or perhaps waiting for something. Back in his tiny third-floor apartment, the place smelled of instant noodles and damp laundry. He dried off and placed the phone on the table. It powered on without charging. No lock screen, no password. The wallpaper was a black and white image of a twisted tree under a stormy sky. A chill crept up his arms. He explored the apps. Everything was empty. No messages, no contacts, no recent calls. The gallery was blank. The phone didn't even have a SIM card. Despite that, the signal bars were full. Strange, but he convinced himself it must be on Wi-Fi. Still, it unnerved him. Hours passed. He cooked dinner, watched videos, and tried to shake off the unease. By midnight, the wind outside had grown louder, howling against the windows. He was brushing his teeth when he heard the sound. The phone's ringtone. A low, drawn-out chime that didn't match any default tone he'd ever heard. He froze, foam still in his mouth. Slowly, he walked into the room. The screen glowed bright in the dark 3T33M. Unknown caller. His finger hovered over the screen. His pulse raced, but logic overtook fear. Someone was messing with him. Maybe a leftover account or a remote access prank. He answered. No voice greeted him, only the sound of static, like a weak radio signal. Then came breathing, slow, wet, heavy, the kind of breathing that made your neck hairs stand. He said, "Hello," 3 times, each more uncertain than the last. The static faded briefly, and a whisper crept through. "You took it." Armin's heart pounded. "Who is this?" he asked. Silence followed. Then another whisper. "Closer now." "Yob have it now." The line cut. The phone went black. Just then, the lights in his apartment flickered and dimmed. He felt like something unseen had entered with the voice. He turned on all the lights, locked the doors, and tried to dismiss it as a prank. But every sound, the creak of the floorboards, the ticking of his wall clock, even the wind outside, seemed louder, closer, like the world was holding its breath. He powered off the phone and tossed it face down on the table. Still, a feeling clung to him that he wasn't alone, that something had come through the call. Not just a voice, a presence. Sleep did not come easy that night. Shadows stretched longer than they should have, and every gust of wind sounded like someone whispering just outside his window. By morning, he had convinced himself it was a dream. A strange, vivid dream brought on by exhaustion and an overactive imagination. The phone remained quiet all day, as if it too had dozed off. Armin almost forgot the call, laughed it off with a friend, and even took a few selfies with the eerie wallpaper. Yet, when he plugged it in that night to charge, the screen blinked without his touch. The wallpaper had changed. Same tree, but now a figure stood beneath it, barely visible. Watching, that night the phone rang again. Same time, same number, and this time it whispered his name. He didn't sleep again for several nights after that. Each 3:33 a.m. call brought deeper unease. Each whisper seemed more familiar, more insistent. The photos in the gallery began to populate with strange images. Dark hallways, burnt furniture, scorched doorways, and a figure always standing just out of focus. Armin began to feel watched, even in broad daylight. Shadows flickered in his apartment. Objects shifted positions. And sometimes, when he glanced at the mirror, a second reflection lagged behind him. Something had come with the phone. Something that remembered who last held it. Something that wasn't finished with its story, or with Armin. The days passed in slow, suffocating silence. Armin stopped sleeping. He couldn't. Each time he closed his eyes, he heard it, the whisper, sometimes near, sometimes faint, but always present. The phone, silent during the day, became something else at night. Every night at exactly 3:33 a.m. it rang. No number. Just a glowing screen, and that haunting ringtone that sounded like distant bells underwater. He answered the first few times. Each time, the voice on the other end grew bolder. It no longer whispered nonsense. Now, it said things only he could know. His childhood secrets, regrets, fears, things he never told anyone. One night, as he sat in bed with the phone in his lap, it rang again. His hands trembled. He didn't answer. Instead, he let it ring. But after a minute, the ringing stopped, and the room temperature dropped. A visible breath cloud puffed from his mouth. The screen lit up by itself. A new photo had appeared in the gallery. It showed his apartment, but not how it looked now. It looked scorched, as though fire had ravaged every corner. There in the center of the image, stood a blackened silhouette, no eyes, no mouth. Just a dark figure watching. He deleted the photo. It came back. He tried resetting the phone. The screen flashed red, and when it turned back on, the wallpaper had changed again. It now showed the same twisted tree, but this time, multiple figures stood beneath it. Their outlines were hazy, as though they had been burned into the background. Armand stared at it for minutes, breath shallow. Something was changing. The phone wasn't just haunted. It was evolving, learning, feeding. He placed it in a drawer and walked away. But the second he turned off the lights, the drawer opened by itself with a creak. The screen glowed inside. He took the phone to a technician. The man examined it, puzzled. No SIM. But there's call history, he said. And the internal storage, it's encrypted with something I've never seen. The man looked uneasy. This phone's doing things I can't explain. It's like it has its own will. Armand left without saying much. He thought of smashing it, burying it, even burning it. But something in his gut whispered it wouldn't let him. That night, he left it powered off and locked it in his kitchen drawer. But at 3:33 am, it turned on. The ringtone pierced the silence again. He grabbed it, furious, and hurled it at the wall. The screen shattered. He stood there, panting, feeling victorious. But then, it buzzed. The broken screen flickered. A message appeared across the fractured glass. You can't silence the dead. A laugh, distant and broken, echoed from the speaker. The phone began to ring again, even though there was no screen left to see. He stepped back in horror. From the hallway mirror, he saw movement. A figure passed behind him. When he turned, nothing was there. But the air felt wrong, thick. Like something ancient was in the room, watching. Armand began recording everything. He tried to capture the calls, the photos, the sudden appearances of shadows. But every video glitched. The screen turned black whenever he pointed the camera toward the phone. Even worse, his other devices began to fail. His laptop showed a blank wallpaper. The same black tree. His TV turned on by itself, displaying static until the words appeared. Answer me. The whispers grew louder, not just in the phone but around the apartment. In the pipes, behind the walls, sometimes even behind him. He would spin around, certain he wasn't alone. But nothing was there. Yet, one night the phone didn't ring. For a brief moment, Armand felt relief. Maybe it was over. But the silence was worse. It was pregnant with dread. The lights began to dim. The walls creaked. His bathroom mirror shattered without warning. And when he stepped inside, someone had scrawled across the wall in what looked like ash. You waited too long. The phone buzzed violently in the living room. He approached, heart hammering. A new voice came through. Not a whisper this time, but a scream. Long, twisted, filled with rage and pain. It sounded like someone dying in fire, begging, cursing, terrified. He answered. The voice quieted. A soft, almost pleading tone followed. I called, no one came. I Bernie and you sleep. Then it repeating. Find me. 47 Hollow Creek Road. Finish what I couldn't. Armand had never heard of the place, but something inside him stirred. A pull, not from curiosity, but from compulsion. The voice wasn't just talking to him, it was inside him. That night, he couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling as shadows shifted and whispered. In one, he thought he saw a hand reaching upward, a hand burned and blackened. The message was clear. He had to go. The next morning, he looked up the address. Hollow Creek was a road that curved out of town and into the decaying edge of Grimridge, near where the forest overtook abandoned homes. The area had been deserted for decades. Locals said a fire broke out years ago. A man was trapped. No one came to help. Armand's blood turned cold. The pieces were aligning. The phone wasn't haunted. It was a grave, one that still needed to be acknowledged. He packed a flashlight, gloves, and a hammer. Maybe he'd find answers. Maybe he'd put the soul to rest. Or maybe it would never let him go. That night, as he prepared to leave, the phone changed again. The wallpaper now showed Hollow Creek Road, but this time, it wasn't empty. The silhouette stood in the middle of the road, waiting. Underneath was a new message: "I'll be watching." Armin locked his apartment, heart pounding. The phone clenched in his hand like a curse he couldn't drop. The wind howled louder than ever as he stepped into the night. Every step away from home felt like a descent into something far beyond explanation. The road was waiting, and so was whatever still held on to that final call. He tried to shake the dread, but the air was wrong. The streets felt deserted, like Grimridge itself had gone quiet to observe. As he neared the edge of town, the buildings grew older, the trees more twisted. The phone buzzed once more. He looked at the screen. Another photo. It showed the back of his head, taken just moments ago. But he had been alone. Or so he thought. With trembling hands, he slid the phone into his pocket. Whatever was guiding him now was much closer than he realized. It was no longer just in the phone. It was behind him, always, whispering. The road to Hollow Creek felt like a journey out of time. As Armin stepped beyond the last functioning street lamp, the night seemed to shift. The wind grew still. The trees flanking the road stood like silent sentinels, branches arched as though reaching toward him. The dirt path crunched beneath his boots, the only sound in a silence that felt unnatural, too complete. His flashlight flickered with every few steps, even though the batteries were fresh. A thick fog began to settle around him, curling like fingers around his legs. And then, through the haze, the shape of the house emerged, battered, leaning and horribly alive in its stillness. The abandoned house at 47 Hollow Creek Road stood like a wound in the landscape. Its wooden siding was rotted and blackened, as if fire had licked at it without fully consuming it. The windows were shattered, jagged glass still clinging to the frames like broken teeth. The front door hung crookedly, swinging slightly despite the absence of wind. The porch groaned beneath Armin's weight, boards bending like something beneath was pushing upward. He paused, hand hovering over the doorknob. The phone in his pocket buzzed violently. He pulled it out. The screen displayed one word in blood-red texting: "Enter." The interior was worse than he imagined. Dust hung in the air like ash. The walls were scorched, wallpaper curling and blackened. A broken furniture was strewn across the floor, and strange symbols were etched into the walls, half burned and smeared with soot. The smell was overwhelming, a blend of wet ash mildew and something sour, like rotting flesh. His flashlight caught glimpses of movement. But when he turned, nothing was there. The phone buzzed again. A new photo had appeared. It showed a room, windowless, with a shattered mirror and a mattress burned down to its springs. The caption read, "Below." A rusted door near the kitchen creaked open slowly as he approached, as though the house anticipated him. A staircase led downward, swallowed by darkness. Armin hesitated. He could still leave, but the weight of the phone in his pocket felt like an anchor. The whispers had grown faint since entering the house, but now they returned, stronger, echoing in his head. Finish it. See it. He gritted his teeth and began his descent. Each step moaned under his weight. Cobwebs clung to his face, and cold air licked his skin like breath. He felt watched, every inch of his skin alive with dread. The basement was pitch black, save for the cone of light from his flickering flashlight. Mold and decay covered every surface. The floor was littered with remnants. Half-melted candles, broken picture frames, and torn scraps of paper with frantic handwriting. In the center of the room, the burned mattress lay just as it appeared in the photo. Beneath it, A circle of blackened ash marked the floor. As he approached, the air grew heavier, pressing against his chest like a weight. He reached down, brushing away some of the ash. Beneath it was a charred phone battery, melted plastic fused with bone. The phone in his hand vibrated violently. The screen glitched, flashing between his reflection and something else, something behind him. He spun around. For a second, he saw it, a figure, tall, burned, hollow-eyed, standing in the corner. But the flashlight flickered, and the figure vanished. The whispers rose in volume, now overlapping into screams, rage, sorrow, pleading. Armin stumbled back, his foot striking something hard. A scorched metal frame. A door, maybe, leading deeper underground. It was welded shut. But claw marks covered the surface, blackened nails embedded in the frame. The realization hit him. Someone had tried to escape this room and failed. Armin fell to his knees. The pain in his head throbbed, as if something inside the house was trying to enter his mind. The phone screen displayed a countdown now. 2014. He didn't know what it meant, but instinct screamed that time was running out. The burned mattress began to smolder, faint embers dancing across the coils. The air grew hot. The symbols on the walls pulsed faintly red. Armin tried to move, but his limbs were heavy, like the house itself had taken hold of him. He crawled toward the stairs. But the doorway above now looked impossibly far, twisted in perspective. Suddenly, the room shook violently. A voice, clearer than before, boomed from every wall. You watched. You did nothing. Now you will burn as I did. The floor beneath the mattress cracked, revealing a pit of glowing coals, flickering light casting monstrous shadows. The temperature soared. Armin turned to flee, but the burned figure now stood between him and the stairs. Closer now. Eyes hollow, mouth wide, skin scorched and dripping. You took my final call. It rasped. Now I'll take yours. The countdown reached 0. The phone in Armin's hand grew searing hot, burning into his skin, fusing with it. He screamed. Desperate. Armin lunged at the figure with the hammer he'd brought. It passed through the apparition as if through smoke. But the smoke clung to his skin, entered his nose and mouth. He collapsed, choking. The voice returned, whispering now, softer, almost sorrowful. I called for help. You answered too late. But now you know what it feels like to be forgotten. The burned figure backed into the flames and vanished. The room cooled instantly. The coals disappeared, and the pit was gone, as if it had never been there. Only the burned circle and claw marks remained. Armin lay motionless, breath ragged. Minutes passed before he crawled back up the stairs. The house was deathly quiet, the air lighter, but something inside him felt off, changed. He stumbled outside, the night now eerily calm. The fog had lifted. The stars peeked through broken clouds, but the phone was still fused to his hand, screen glowing softly. A new notification blinking. A call ended for now. His reflection in a broken window showed not just his face, but a faint figure behind him, standing at his shoulder, watching silently. Armin turned slowly. Nothing there, just wind. Yet the feeling of being followed never left him again. He walked away from the house, but the road didn't feel the same. It twisted, stretched, led him in unfamiliar loops. He tried retracing his steps, but ended up back at the same place again and again. The phone began showing different timestamps, none matching real time. Photos appeared on their own, showing angles of the house he never visited, and one photo of himself asleep, though he had not rested in days. That night, he made it back to town, barely recognizing the streets. Grimridge looked darker somehow. The street lamps flickered. People he passed didn't look him in the eye. Something had followed him. Back in his apartment, Armin tried everything. Burned sage, smashed mirrors, even submerged the phone in salt water. But nothing worked. At 3:33 a.m., it rang again. He didn't answer this time. He couldn't. The phone didn't give him the option. It answered itself. The voice on the line was no longer pleading. It was inside his head, part of his thoughts. The line between Armin and the spirit had blurred. The call had not just connected them, it had merged them. The final whisper said, "Now you burn with me," as the phone glowed red hot once more. The lights went out and stayed out. The next morning brought no sunlight. Grimridge remained wrapped in a dull, grey mist that blurred the skyline and soaked everything in cold dampness. Armin woke on the floor, his clothes soaked in sweat and ash. The phone, still fused to his palm, pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. He tried again to pull it away, but it refused to budge, as if the nerves in his hand had grown around it. His mind was frayed, haunted by the image of the burning basement and the whispers that no longer waited for nightfall. They were constant now, soft murmurs behind every sound, like breath just behind his ear. He stumbled through the day, disoriented. Every face in the street seemed unfamiliar, though some nodded as if they knew him. Reflections no longer matched his movements. When he looked in shop windows or puddles, his reflection turned its head seconds too late, sometimes staring directly into his eyes while he looked away. The boundaries of reality were thinning. He stopped recognizing his own voice. It echoed back in conversations, altered slightly, deeper, more guttural. That evening, he returned to the house, unable to stay away. The whispers were louder there, like a chorus urging him forward, deeper, downward. Inside, the house had changed. The burned walls had reformed in places, half repaired like a memory being slowly reconstructed. The staircase to the basement was now whole, stairs straight and clean. No dust, no ash, like someone, or something, had been rebuilding. Armin descended again, this time without hesitation. The walls of the basement pulsed faintly, veins of red light beneath the plaster. The once scorched mattress was now untouched, lying neatly on a metal frame. Candles flickered on their own, lighting the space. The air was warm, close. He was no longer a visitor. He had become a part of the house itself. In the far corner of the room, a door had appeared. It hadn't been there before. Its surface was smooth and black, as if carved from obsidian, absorbing all light. A single handle of rusted iron protruded from it. Armin approached cautiously, heart pounding. The phone in his hand buzzed with rising intensity. A new message flashed across the screen. "Reveal what you refuse to see." He gripped the handle. The metal burned his skin, but he didn't let go. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a narrow passageway lined with charred photographs. Family portraits, all with the faces burned or scratched away. As he stepped inside, the air shifted. The temperature dropped, breath crystallizing before him. The hallway twisted slightly, disorienting his balance. At the end, another room waited, far older than the rest of the house, stone walls and dirt floors. In the center, surrounded by melted candles and bone fragments, was an old rotary telephone. Its cord was severed, yet it rang, loudly, sharply, the same haunting tone he had come to fear. The phone in his hand glowed bright red in response. He stepped forward, drawn like a moth to flame. Every whisper he'd heard before rose now into a deafening roar in his head. He lifted the receiver. The voices stopped instantly. Silence fell like a curtain. Then, a voice he hadn't heard before, calm, cold, and terrifying in its clarity, spoke it. "You let me die." The weight of guilt crushed his chest. Armin dropped to his knees, trembling. "I didn't know you," he whispered. I couldn't have helped." The voice responded, "Not me alone. You ignored them all. Every call, every cry. You turned away from the suffering in front of you. Now you will hear them all." Suddenly, dozens of voices exploded from the receiver, screaming, pleading, reliving their deaths through the line. The phone's cord writhed like a snake, wrapping around his wrist, pulling him closer. His body locked up. He couldn't move. One by one, visions flashed in his mind. Tragedies he had witnessed or walked past: a man bleeding on the street, a girl sobbing in a gas station, a fire alarm ignored in an apartment building. Real people, real moments. He had forgotten them, chosen not to act. But the dead remembered. The receiver grew heavier, now fused to his ear. It whispered endlessly. The sounds of people suffocating, drowning, burning, screaming his name as though he had abandoned them all. The stone floor beneath him cracked. Ash and smoke poured out. Blackened hands reached from the fissures, pulling at his clothes, his skin, each hand a memory, each finger a voice. He cried out. But the sound didn't leave his lips. It echoed inside his skull, bouncing off the memories he had buried. Please, I didn't know. I didn't understand. But the voices offered no forgiveness. The rotary phone pulsed with heat. His own phone, now glowing like an ember, displayed an image of him kneeling, burning, disappearing. The caption beneath the image read, "Call history complete." He was no longer the caller. He was the message. Time ceased to exist in the chamber. The walls twisted with shifting images, some from his life, others unfamiliar and terrifying. Faces of the dead stared through the stone. The room itself pulsed like a living organ. The whispers became lullabies of torment. Armin tried to pull the receiver from his ear, but it tore skin with it. Blood streamed down his neck. Still, he listened. Still, he remembered. The pain wasn't just physical. It was the weight of countless forgotten moments. The ignored, the abandoned, the forsaken. They had found him, and through him, they spoke once more. Their voices would never end. Eventually, Armin stood. His eyes were blackened, his voice gone. The phone, now fused completely with his arm, blinked softly with a new interface. Not a user profile, a transmitter. He had become something new. A vessel, a relay. Those who answered his calls would hear the same cries, suffer the same descent. The house had taken him in, rebuilt him, hollowed him. He exited the basement slowly, no longer walking like a man, but moving like something half-born from another world. Behind him, the rotary phone continued ringing. It would never stop. The dead had found their line, and they would not be silenced again. Back outside, the wind returned. The fog rolled in heavier now, swallowing the road as Armin stepped into it. Every light he passed flickered. Dogs barked. Cats hissed. The world around him sensed what he had become. As he walked through Grimridge, no one met his gaze. Phones in nearby homes lit up on their own. Screens flickered with static. In the distance, a clock struck 3:03 a.m. simultaneously across the town. Phones began to ring. The curse had transferred. It was spreading. The dead had found a new way in. Through wires, through screens. Through one man who now was many. And deep within the basement, where the final call had first been made, the rotary phone rang once more. But this time, someone answered. Grimridge did not sleep that night. Windows rattled without wind. The clock stopped ticking at exactly 3:33 a.m., as though time itself recoiled. Armin, or whatever remained of him, wandered the streets like a shadow made flesh, eyes glowing faintly, face expressionless. Every home he passed grew colder. Within each, phones began to buzz softly, vibrating in unison. Most ignored it, thinking it a glitch. Others answered, only to be met with silence. And Thing the Whisberg. You heard me one sec, now hear them all. For those who listened longer, the voice changed. It morphed into that of someone they had once lost, or someone they had tried to forget. Meanwhile, the house at 47 Hollow Creek stood still and silent, as if holding its breath. Inside, the rotary phone rang with purpose. A new visitor had arrived. A young man named Idris, drawn by online rumors and urban legends. He'd read whispers about the dead man's phone, a cursed object passed from hand to hand, binding the living to the forgotten. He believed it was a hoax, a creepy story for thrill seekers. But when he reached the house, the fog parted for him, as though inviting him inside. The front door opened on its own. He stepped in, phone in hand, ready to document everything. The house greeted him with an airy warmth. Unlike the typical rot and decay of abandoned places, this house pulsed with something different. Life, memory, grief. Shadows clung to the corners like stains, and the light bulbs flickered above with weak resistance. Idris moved carefully, taking pictures, narrating for his online audience. But his voice began to echo strangely. It lagged behind his words. He didn't notice. In the living room, he found scorch marks along the floor, leading toward the basement door, which now stood open. A breeze rose from below. Cold, whispering, layered with voices. His phone buzzed. Unknown caller. Through 3 a.m., he answered, grinning for the camera. But no sound came from the phone. Instead, the house reacted. The air grew thicker. The wallpaper peeled slowly in strips, revealing symbols carved into the wood beneath. The shadows lengthened. Idris hesitated, calling out, "Hello." A soft, burned voice answered, "You're the next number." Panic rose in his throat. He turned to leave, but the door had closed behind him. His phone blinked. A new message had appeared. "Final ring begins now." The flashlight on his phone flickered, then died. He descended into the basement, swallowed by the dark, steps groaning beneath him like weary bones. Down below, the room was lit by candles that hadn't been there before. The rotary phone sat in the center, receiver off the hook, cord twitching like a live wire. Idris approached slowly, phone camera still recording. The moment he stepped into the center, every candle flared at once. A scream erupted, not from him, but from the very walls. Dozens of overlapping voices, crying, shouting, whispering curses, prayers, confessions. The rotary phone spun on its own. The dead had gathered. Idris fell to his knees, hands over his ears, but the sound bypassed his body. It poured directly into his mind, raw and relentless. Visions filled his eyes. Fires consuming rooms, water rushing into lungs, car crashes, people buried alive, forgotten tragedies, seen from the victim's eyes. A woman in a burning apartment, screaming into a phone that never answered. A child trapped beneath rubble, dialing 3 numbers over and over. Idris screamed, but the voices drowned him out. His phone screen shattered. His camera kept rolling. Across the world, those watching the livestream stared as their own devices flickered. The voice from Idris's feed now came through their phones, laptops, even smart TVs. The dead man's phone had found its new transmitter, an endless, digital grave. Back in the basement, Idris's face twisted in agony. The receiver lifted on its own and clamped to his ear. The cord coiled around his neck, not choking, but bonding. The rotary dial spun faster and faster, clicking through numbers that no longer made sense. His skin cracked, glowing from within like smoldering wood. He wasn't dying. He was transforming, becoming a vessel, just like Armin before him. But this time, it was different. The connection was no longer limited to one cursed object. The phone had evolved. With Idris live streaming the moment, millions had now heard the call. And once you hear it, you are never the same. Outside the house, storm clouds rolled unnaturally fast over Grimridge. Lightning cracked but never struck. The trees bent as if bowing. In homes, hospitals, even moving cars, phones rang all at once, 3 a.m., regardless of time zone. The voice was now collective. Not one soul, but a multitude of them. All those who had died unheard. Now they were being heard, whether people wanted to or not. Those who answered were changed. Their eyes went black, their speech slowed, their memories warped. They began to whisper at night. They wandered roads. They stood still under trees, watching, waiting, transmitting the curse further. The curse didn't end at Hollow Creek. It spread through the internet, through static, through every networked signal. The original phone was no longer needed. It had done its job. It had been the matchstick. Now the fire had caught. Those who ignored the calls were haunted in other ways. Repeating nightmares, visions of scorched corridors, phantom ringtones echoing at 333. Some tried to destroy their devices, but it didn't matter. The signal was inside them now. The whispers had become part of their thoughts. The curse fed on guilt, on silence, on the moments they looked away from someone's suffering and kept walking. Some say Armand still walks the border of Grimridge, forever calling. Others say Idris is trapped in the live stream, face distorted, eyes pleading. But what remains undeniable is this: the ring still comes. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one night at 3:33 a.m., your phone will buzz, and when you answer, you'll hear not a voice, but a chorus, a collective scream, and a whisper underneath it all. We remember. And now so will you. The dead don't need justice, they need ears. And now they've found them. And somewhere deep beneath Hollow Creek, in the roots of that burned house, the rotary phone still sits in silence until it rings one final time. Will you answer?